All right, we're back on the record. The time is 12:57 PM.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have the opportunity to bring up Mr. Beer for a short bit of questioning on Exhibit 3AI, the reserve report and the comparative analysis that there were some questions on, for just some brief clarification and an opportunity for everyone to ask some questions.
Okay, we make it very brief, though. We still have a
We will.
3 PM deadline.
I appreciate that. We're looking at base pages 48 through 52. It includes this large document as well in that number. Okay. So, Mr. Beer, this is the,
I'm with you.
this is Exhibit 3AI. On the reserve report, the single page summary of the reserve report, there is a designation of the ARO of 24.833 million, right?
Correct.
Please talk into the microphone.
And that number ties to the comparative analysis on Bates pages 49 through 52. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. There were some questions earlier directed to Ms. Harris regarding the comparative analysis on pages 49 to 52. In particular, there are some, for instance, active wells that are listed as a status of active that have no reserve report designation, yet they have an ARO designation. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, out of the roughly 230 wells, there will be a small handful of wells that may show up in the state database as active producing. Maybe it's 5 barrels a month. Maybe we're doing it just to keep the lease. Maybe it's out of date. So there will be some that don't sync, perfectly. But all of those wells will still have the P&A obligation still associated with it.
But let me ask this. So you're saying that some of the information might be missing? I mean,
No,
I mean, it says on this page 52. On this one I'm looking at, it's well serial number 242687. It says that it is active producing. On the reserve report, it's got nothing. But yet a asset retirement obligation of $250,000.
yeah. So again, right under that looks like you have a shut in. This may just be a well that it is at the virtually end of its life. I mean,
Okay,
that's
but
why I say there's a handful of wells throughout.
okay, but for us to rely on it, we have to be comfortable that we can rely on it. And based on what I'm hearing, this income approach isn't reliable.
I'm not sure if that statement would be thought
Well,
of
that's what this spreadsheet shows and what I'm hearing in the testimony.
But if you have
I'm
again,
not worried about the other wells that, whatever they say, I'm worried about this one. It says it's an active well, but it's got nothing for the reserve report. So either there is nothing because it's not active, or it is active and there's nothing being reported. So how can we rely on that?
and again, from the reserve report, which is off to the right, what Ryder Scott has done is gone through each well that is economic, and in this case, producing 5 barrels a month, may have it in the active producing category, but it wouldn't show up as certainly economic from a Ryder Scott standpoint. So I don't think having a couple of wells fall in what I would consider somewhat limbo, where it is shown as active producing, but again, this is a relatively old well. It is probably on its last legs and might not have enough volumes to be economic. Whereas all the others, at least have some positive economics before your asset retirement obligation.
It just doesn't seem to be reliable.
And the word active, that's not your word. That is, comes off the Sonras report.
That's correct.
So based on this report, Ryder Scott has assigned no reserve value to some wells that may be statused on Sunrise as active and producing. Yet in the determination of Ryder Scott, they assign no reserve value to it based upon their review of it.
That's correct. I mean, I'd actually flip it around and be more suspect of the Sunris. Why is that on as an active producing? What's important, at least I think, is from the reserve report standpoint, from a Ryder Scott standpoint, they've gone through each well, and I would suggest would have a better sense as to what the economics behind each well would be, and would included in the reserve report, with some value, versus, again, there are a handful of wells that are not ours. So all we're doing is reporting. So the reliability might be more on the Sunris statement than Ryder Scott.
So this comparative analysis seeks to tie specific reserve values from the Ryder Scott report to specific wells that were given a reserve value, which added up to $60.9 million, correct?
That's the revenues generated over, from these, the listed wells, correct?
Now, in the column asset retirement obligation, you have some different numbers. I see a lot of numbers that are the same. 193,000, 250,000, 238,000. What are those numbers tied to? Is that a Cantium estimate?
Yeah, so that is, again, I mentioned earlier, we probably are one of the most active abandonment groups out there. So out of 250, maybe 300 wells that we have abandoned, we have a pretty good sense of about what the average is for a certain type of well. And so, as Ms. Harris mentioned earlier, from our engineers, our abandonment engineers, each one of these wells fits into a certain profile, and we've assigned a certain amount of P&A obligation or liability with a certain type of well.
And
So
then
those
that
numbers are coming from the engineers,
It's coming from our engineers.
from Cantium's engineers.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that total adds to the $24.8 million that's on the Ryder Scott summary sheet, correct?
That's correct.
For a fair market value of $36.149 million.
That is correct. I might add that this number for not just the state, but for all of our properties, our engineers provided this information for Ryder Scott, and Ryder Scott vetted and said, this makes sense. So this is part of the overall Ryder Scott engineering report. So it's not divorced from it, it is part of it.
So there was some discussion earlier about the Ryder Scott report being produced in total versus the summary and comparative analysis that you provided. I know this is a new concept provided by the Constitution this year. Why didn't you produce the entire Ryder Scott report for the assessor to review?
Yeah, to a certain extent, it is new. We thought, let's provide the summary and then provide this spreadsheet, which gives a lot of detail. I'm not sure that providing another 230 pages worth of information would have been any true incremental information to the assessor. We certainly didn't get the request back. We tried to reach out to see what else might be wanted or required, but we felt like this was a good start for us to lay out kind of the valuation approach that we were utilizing and put in a fair amount of information to be reviewed.
I'm not sure if Mr. Eddington has questions.
I do, Mr. Beer. I want to start with the well that Chairman Shahar was asking about, well number 242687. It has a 0 reserve report valuation. You said that's what's listed in the Ryder Scott report.
That's correct.
Can you show me where that appears?
Show you where,
Where it's
That-
listed in the Ryder Scott report?
yeah, it's listed as a 0 in it. If you turn to the.
Well,
sum-
I'm not
in-
talking about the spreadsheet that Ms. Harris prepared. I'm talking about in the actual
It's
Ryder Scott report that was provided to the assessor.
Sure, it's part of the summary that we provided to get to the 60 million minus the 24.
Can you
get to
show
the-
me where?
It is part of the summary. So if you look at the summary, somewhere in there, there'll be an extra 0 added.
No, I'm not talking about the 0.
Uh,
I'm talking about where in the information provided, is there a 0 reserve report valuation applied to well 242687?
Would you state the question again? I'm not sure. Within a reserve report, what is provided,
Right, now, that's my
Okay.
question. Within the reserve report, not Ms. Harris's spreadsheet, within the reserve report, where does it disclose a 0 reserve report valuation for well 242687?
it is in the Ryder Scott Reserve Report. It is part of the summary. So you do not see it in the summary, but it's in that, well, it would be in the summary for the Ryder Scott
So
report.
as you provided the summary, I would have seen. that 0.
Absolutely, you would have.
But you didn't fill that information.
We
Was-
provided the summary, we provided a lot of this information and really got no response back and felt like this is a new process. How detailed would the assessor like to go for a single well? You know, maybe that one page would have been helpful. I don't think so, but now we know. Maybe that is something that we'll provide in
should-
the future.
So it would have just been one page?
Could have been 230 pages, as I mentioned, but we didn't get a whole lot of traction on 3 pages.
And again, now turning to that portion of the Ryder Scott report that was provided, that single page.
Yep.
I've been through this, but I want to make sure down below where it says less ARO and FMV, that was
Yep.
not part of the Ryder Scott report. That was added by Ms. Harris, correct?
That was added, that right there was added by Ms. Harris.
And the ARO of 24,833,000, that was from engineering reports?
That was extracted from the Ryder Scott report, who utilized the
Oh.
information from our ARO engineers.
So again, if we had had the full report, we would be able to see the basis for that number.
Yes, although it is exactly this number. So you have actually seen it if you look at these 3 or 4 pages.
Well, wait a second.
No,
Did she not just testify that she built this spreadsheet, the spreadsheet?
Yep.
This was prepared by
Ms. Harris.
Ms. Harris,
Yep.
correct?
Yep,
I mean, there's no original work product. She's just reporting numbers from other reports.
that's correct.
So you're saying that the table picks up the 24,833,000 figure, but are you suggesting that it validates the 24,833?
When you say validates, that
I'm trying
is-
to understand what you're saying. I understand that she picked up the
what-
correct number.
Okay, what I'm saying is if you look through all the state wells and some the ARO,
They all add up to 24,833,000.
that's correct. And that number was put on this summary sheet.
And my question, where did the original asset retirement obligation values come from? Was that from the Ryder Scott report
Yes,
in portions that were not provided?
correct.
Thank you. I think I understand. That's all the questions I have.
We have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
No more witnesses?
They rest?
I think it's turned over to me. I
Oh.
believe they have.
They rested. Okay. All right, you're at bat.
I'd like to call Miss Jessica Swift. Yeah. Those wheels. Ms. Swift, you've already been sworn in. Can you state your name and position for the record? One second.
My name's Jessica Swift, and I'm a deputy assessor with the Lafourche Assessor's Office.
And you were the person responsible for reviewing the records provided by Cantium and working up the assessment on this property, were you not?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell me the process you went through and the steps you took in preparing the 2021 assessment for Cantium?
Yes, I go off of what they provide to me, what we had last year, do my comparing of, status of wells and follow the guidelines of the tax commission and whatever's not in the rules and regs. We go off of what they provide for us, and that's pretty much it.
There was some testimony earlier, specifically referring the letter. So I've got so many letters out. The September 3rd, 2021 letter that I believe was not received until October. Do you recall receiving this letter? And again, this is Taxpayer Exhibit 3AI.
Yes, I believe I received it once we came back from being closed for several weeks because of Hurricane Ida, but I do remember receiving it.
And Ms. Harris testified that this letter was a request for a reduction in value for economic obsolescence. Did you review and consider the information that Ms. Harris provided with this letter?
Well, I noticed it was a preliminary statement. I looked through it, but it was crazy time in our office with the hurricane. I did review it, but did not consider it.
Okay. So when you say you did not consider it, you did not consider it to be sufficient proof to warrant a reduction in value for obsolescence?
That's correct.
Is there anything else you would like to add about the steps you took to assess this property for tax year 2021?
No.
Thank you. No further questions. Please answer any questions the commission or opposing counsel may have.
Ms. Swift, you mentioned just now that when in looking at this Cantium assessment, you look at last year's information, you use the rules and regulations of the tax commission, and that's it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to the submission that is dated September 3rd, 2021, Exhibit 3AI of the materials you reviewed but did not consider these other approaches to value that Cantium was proposing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is it because the consideration is not warranted because it does not comply with the tables? Is that why?
Yeah, I pretty much, go by what the rules and regulations provide for us to use.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank
All
you,
right,
Ms.
thank
Swift. Next, I'd like to call Assessor Thibodeau. She was absent. We did the
yeah, we
swearing
need
in.
to
We
have,
will need to swear her in.
Yeah, we need to have Ms. Thibodeau sworn in.
Good afternoon. Could you please state your name and position for the record?
Wendy Thibodeau, the Lafourche Parish Assessor.
And you're familiar with Cantium's assessment for tax year 2021, are you not?
Yes, I am.
And you've been in the room today for all of the testimony, were you not?
Yes.
I want to ask you a couple of questions. Well, let's start with the asset purchase agreement. This is a rather lengthy document that has been filed under protective order. Have you ever been provided a copy of the actual asset purchase agreement?
No.
Ms. Sims sort of suggested earlier that, well, it was submitted to me and it was submitted under protective order. Just to be clear, did I ever provide a copy of the asset purchase agreement to your office?
No.
Based on the information that was provided, were you able to determine the actual sales price that was paid for the wells acquired by Cantium LLC?
No.
Earlier, Ms. Harris went through some of the attachments, specifically her comparative analysis as part of Exhibit 3 BI. And a lot of these wells have negative values. Do you ever assign negative values
No.
to wells?
No.
They base the income approach valuation on a Ryder Scott estimate. And again, it's a lengthy document. They only gave you one page of it. To be clear, and I'm looking at it, that this is part of Taxpayer Exhibit 3AI, the one-page extract from the Ryder Scott report. Do you consider that sufficient information to do an income approach valuation?
Yeah.
What's the first thing you ask for when a taxpayer, or you want to see when a taxpayer to do an income approach valuation?
I asked for their financials.
And were you provided any financials?
No.
I want to go back to an issue, and I'll be honest, this is the real reason I called you up here. I wasn't planning to at first, but Chairman Shahardy had raised some questions about the age of the sale. Again, this is a sale with an effective date of January 17th, January 1st, 2017. What is the effective date of your 2021 assessment?
January 1st, 2021.
So 4 years later.
Yes.
Does the age of a sale, and everybody seems to agree that at a certain point they tend to become stale, does the age of this sale cause you any pause or concern?
Yes.
And can you explain that?
Well, because every 4 years, there is a state mandated reassessment for real estate. And in the same laws, rules and regulations, it is required of the assessor to reassess personal property every year. So how can something of person that is categorized as personal property not be reassessed every year according to the fair market value or the tables that I'm required to follow all the time, that in 2021, that's even surpassed what the real estate reassessment mandate is. The concern is how come this is treated different than every other property in Lafourche Parish or the state for that matter?
Thank you, Assessor Thibodeau. Listen, one last question. Ms. Harris testified that the letter dated September 3rd, again, because of Hurricane Ida, it was presented sometime later, Exhibit 3AI. She presented this as a request for a reduction in value for obsolescence. Do you believe that the information that was provided to your office constitutes sufficient proof of a loss to warrant a reduction in value for obsolescence?
No.
Thank you. No further questions. Please answer any questions the commission or opposing counsel may have.
Good afternoon, Assessor.
Mhm.
Is it your testimony that the asset sale and purchase agreement was never offered to your office for review?
Not in its entirety.
Do you remember testifying in May of this year in a hearing for 2020?
Yes.
And in that hearing, as this topic came up as well, do you recall discussing the fact that this asset sale and purchase agreement was offered to your office for review and you did not want to look at it?
The purchase agreement?
The asset sale and purchase agreement, the confidential document. that was-
Because I wanted the sale.
You wanted the sale, but it was offered to you for review. Isn't that correct?
The agreement, the purchase agreement.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't accept the purchase agreement for a home. I want the sale.
Isn't it true that the preliminary settlement statement evidencing the closing of the sale was provided to you in advance as well in September 2020 and in 2021? Isn't that correct?
Hold up, my glasses broke. I apologize. Yeah. Is what he's talking about?
Yes.
Okay, yes. That was in the September 3rd that we got in October.
That's,
This-
but due to the unfortunate damage from the hurricane, it was delivered in
Yeah.
October.
I believe, if this is what you're talking, if this document is with this paper you're talking about, yes.
The preliminary settlement statement that was executed with the asset purchase and sale agreement was
Yes.
provided to your office.
Yes, this sheet.
For 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and it was also provided for the 2020 tax year as well.
I don't remember 2020. I can say for
Okay.
this letter right here, this document, I recall this document.
Okay, that's fair. Exhibit 3B that's provided also refers to the preliminary settlement agreement, just for your information. Now, do you remember having a call with Cantium to discuss the 2021 request for obsolescence?
Yes,
Okay. Is that the only discussions you had with Cantium regarding this tax year?
I believe so. Outside of the border review, I believe that's the only one.
Okay,
With the
okay.
hurricane, I can't say if it was just the only one, but I believe it is.
That's fair enough. Now, with respect to the reserve report for this new constitutional amendment that everybody's trying to deal with, did you read the reserve report that was provided to you, the single page that's located in Exhibit 3AI?
I looked at it.
Okay.
I mean, it's numbered.
Did you ask any questions about it
No,
of Cantium?
because when someone, any company, not just Cantium, any company asks for obsolescence according to income, the first thing I ask for is their financials to stay uniform and consistent, which is required in my position as assessor.
You didn't ask for financials from Cantium, did you?
I believe, did they ask for, if you ask for income, I believe Jessica, if you ask for obsolescence according for the income approach, I believe Jessica is who would have answered that, not me. By the
Okay.
time it comes to me, those requests are made by my deputies before you talk to me.
So you're saying that Jessica requested financial information from Cantium?
I'm assuming she did.
You're assuming she did. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's procedure in my office for not just oil and gas, it's for watercraft, it's for personal property, it's for anything.
It's a procedure in your office and you're assuming she did, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
if they ask for obsolescence according economic obsolescence.
Did you consider the Ryder Scott report that Cantium provided here? Did you
This paper. is what
review
he's
and
talking about?
consider it as correct?
No.
That paper as a measure of value for the income approach?
No,
You did not consider it. Okay.
you asking for for obsolescence according to the income approach,
That's correct.
economic obsolescence.
That's what I
Okay,
asked you.
yep, no.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking.
So when is a sale stale as far as you're concerned?
In personal property, real property,
We're talking about this property here, subject to this assessment. When is a sale stale? It's hard to say.
I would give it no more than 4 years, but if the climate changed prior to that, I would say prior, but with personal property, you reassess every year. So it would go, in my opinion, it would go the next year.
So
in
it would be-
2018. If the sale was in the beginning part of 17, in my opinion, the sale is stale in 2018 because the law is that I have to reassess personal property every year. In real estate, the sale would be stale after the 4-year reassessment cycle.
But you would always comply with the rules and regulations of the commission, right?
I try to.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. No redirect.
Okay, any questions? Okay,
And I have no further witnesses, Your
no
Honor.
further witnesses.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, so this is wrapped up. Let's take care of some housekeeping. I'd like to get some post-hearing briefs from both sides. I'd like you to include some findings of fact that you think we need to make a determination of. Also like a discussion about why or why not that sale is applicable and not applicable. And an input as to what exactly it is you're asking for.
Sure.
So there's no question, what both sides are asking for. I know we have Thanksgiving coming up, so I would normally say 3 weeks, but with Thanksgiving in the mix, 4 weeks,
If I could
from-
ask,
which I think is December 8th.
how quickly do you think you could get at least a rough draft to us with Thanksgiving? So. Pardon? Couple of weeks, then yeah, 4 weeks work.
I mean, yeah, and if you don't have the transcript, all you gotta do is tell us and we'll extend it. If you do make a reference to the transcript, though, please tell us where in the transcript, that reference is, 8 pages enough? 8 pages, 8.5 by 11, 12-point type? Is that good?
Whatever you want, Mr. Chairman.
I
We'll-
mean, I
we'll
don't want
comply
two-
with that.
I don't want 2-point type.
9-point type and quarter-inch margins.
2-centimeter margins, but, 12-point type if y'all think that's sufficient. Okay.
Okay, I'm confirming. So if we have the transcript in a couple of weeks, you wanted our post-hearing briefs in 4 weeks, is that correct?
Well, I'm saying 4 weeks. If you got the transcript tomorrow and both sides talk and you agree to get it in earlier, that's fine.
Putting a lot of pressure on.
Well, no,
on,
well, I'm
the
just,
Gino.
no, I'm just saying
What's 4 weeks from today?
December 8th, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, contact Mr. Hoffman
That works.
if there's a problem of some kind.
Great. Thank you very
All
much.
right,
We
well,
tried
thank
to be
you all.
quick. We tried to be quick today, so you're welcome.
Thank you all very much. All right, I think that concludes our docket for today. We
Well,
do,
you need to move
somebody
to take it
does.
under advisement.
Did we forget to do something? Oh, yeah.
Did you just make that
All right,
motion?
I'm gonna make the motion. We take this matter under advisement. Any objection to the motion? No objection to the motion. The motion stands adopted. I'm just trying to get us out of here, that's all. We have a motion to adjourn. Is there any objection to the motion? There being no objection, we stand adjourned at 1:31 PM.